In 1983, researchers at the University of Waikato in New Zealand conducted a study that would change how hospitals treat infected wounds. They tested raw honey against commercial supermarket honey on antibiotic-resistant bacteria. The raw honey killed the bacteria. The supermarket honey showed almost no effect. Within years, hospitals began using medical-grade honey for wounds that modern antibiotics couldn't heal. But this medical honey isn't what you buy at the store. It's never heated, never filtered, and costs 10 times as much. For 3,000 years, all honey was this potent. What changed? Egyptian tombs contain jars of honey over 3,000 years old. When archaeologists opened them, the honey was still edible. Lab analysis confirmed it retained antibacterial properties. Medieval monastery records from the 13th century documented that honey-treated battle wounds had markedly higher survival rates than untreated injuries. Vikings took honey on voyages lasting months without refrigeration. It preserved meat and prevented wound infections. This wasn't folklore. This was repeatable medicine that worked. Drop a comment right now. Does your honey crystallize or does it stay liquid forever? Because what you're about to learn will explain the difference. Medieval beekeepers worked with wild bee colonies. Bees lived in hollow trees, woven straw skeps, or simple wooden boxes. The bees decided where to build their combs and when to swarm. Once a year in late summer, the beekeeper cut out some combs and left the rest. The bees survived winters on their own, with no human feeding required. These colonies were genetically diverse and robust. Modern commercial bees are bred from a handful of queen lines selected for docility and high production. Most commercial operations feed bees sugar syrup when natural stores run low, then harvest the honey and sell it. The bees store this syrup in their combs alongside real nectar. What you buy is often a mixture of honey and processed sugar. There's no requirement to disclose this. Medieval bees foraged across dozens of plant species throughout the season: linden, willow, blackberry, clover, wildflowers. Each plant contributed different enzymes and compounds. The result was honey containing hundreds of bioactive substances, including glucose oxidase, which produces hydrogen peroxide, a natural antibacterial agent. Modern commercial bees often get placed on single-crop industrial farms. California almond operations alone use over 2 million hives each February. The bees collect from one plant species for weeks. The honey lacks the diversity that created healing properties. Medieval honey was never heated. Beekeepers cut combs from hives and let the honey drain through cloth at room temperature. The honey was cloudy, thick, and crystallized within weeks. This was normal and expected. Your supermarket honey has been heated to 70 or 80 degrees Celsius to prevent crystallization and speed processing. Enzymes denature at 40 degrees. Glucose oxidase, responsible for antibacterial effects, is destroyed at 50 degrees. By 70 degrees, what remains is biologically inactive sugar. A 2011 Food Safety News investigation found that 76% of honey from major U.S. retailers contains zero pollen, removed by ultrafiltration. Before we continue, hit like if this is changing how you see that jar in your cupboard. You now know what real honey did for millennia. Next, we'll show you exactly why modern processing destroys it, and the reason they filter out the pollen will make you question everything on your shelf.
They didn't accidentally ruin honey. They engineered its destruction, and they did it for profit, not safety. In 2008, a German laboratory called Quality Services International tested commercial honey from major European retailers. They found honey that had been ultra-filtered to remove all pollen. No pollen means no geographic fingerprint. The honey had originated in China, but was laundered through Vietnam and relabeled as European honey. When European Food Safety Authority investigators reviewed the findings, they didn't enforce stricter standards. They changed the regulations to accommodate the practice. 200 million euros in honey imports were at stake. They chose commerce over transparency. Let's name the operations. Sioux Honey Association, the largest honey cooperative in the United States. Capilano, Australia's biggest supplier, and the supply chain that moves honey from Chinese producers through Southeast Asian countries into Western markets, where it gets relabeled as local product. These operations use industrial processes that strip honey of everything medieval beekeepers preserved. Here are the processes that turned medicine into sugar water. First, selective breeding of bees. Medieval colonies showed wide genetic diversity and survived winters independently. Modern commercial operations breed from limited queen lines selected for docility and production volume. These bees produce more honey, but require medication, sugar feeding, and constant management to survive. Second, monoculture placement. Medieval bees foraged across dozens of plant species each season. Modern bees get transported to industrial farms and placed on single crops for weeks at a time. California almond farms alone use over 2 million hives each February. Nutritional analysis shows honey from single-source foraging has dramatically reduced diversity of beneficial compounds compared to multi-source honey. Third, sugar syrup feeding. Standard practice in commercial operations is to harvest most of the honey and replace it with sugar syrup or high-fructose corn syrup. Bees store this in their combs alongside remaining nectar. The mixture gets extracted and sold. There's no legal requirement to disclose this substitution. If your honey remains liquid for many months without crystallizing, it likely contains added syrup. Fourth, heat treatment. Industry standard is 71 degrees Celsius. Some operations heat to 80 degrees to speed processing. Enzymes become inactive above 40 degrees. Glucose oxidase is destroyed at 50 degrees. The justification is preventing fermentation and maintaining liquid state. The reality is that liquid honey sells better than crystallized honey. This is a marketing preference, not a safety requirement. Fifth, ultrafiltration. Heated honey gets pressed through microscopic filters that remove pollen. Pollen is honey's geographic signature. Laboratory analysis of pollen can identify the specific region where bees foraged. This makes adulteration detectable. Remove the pollen and origin becomes untraceable. Chinese honey with quality control issues gets filtered, rerouted through third countries, and sold as pure local honey. The problem is that pollen is nutrient-dense. It contains proteins, amino acids, vitamins, and immune-supporting compounds. Honey without pollen loses a significant portion of its beneficial properties. Sixth, pesticide residues. A 2017 study published in the journal Environmental Research tested commercial honey samples across Europe. 75% contained detectable glyphosate, the herbicide known to affect gut bacteria. Neonicotinoids, pesticides linked to bee population decline, were found in the honey itself. Seventh, plastic storage. Medieval honey was stored in clay pots or wooden barrels that allowed the honey to mature over time. Modern honey sits in plastic drums in warehouses for months. Chemical leaching from plastic containers has been documented in stored honey. Here's the regulatory capture. The National Honey Board in the United States is funded by fees on honey sales. It functions as an industry lobbying group. Their consumer education emphasizes that liquid honey is fresh and crystallized honey is old. This trained consumers to prefer the processed version over authentic honey. Most people now think crystallization indicates spoilage. It's the opposite. Crystallization indicates authenticity. In 2014, the European Union allowed honey to be labeled as blend of EU and non-EU honey, without specifying source countries. This labeling hides origin. Estimates suggest a significant portion of honey sold in Europe cannot be traced to its actual source. You're not eating honey, you're eating an industrial product designed to maximize shelf stability and minimize production costs while hiding its origin. Stick with me as I am going to show you exactly what this does to your body when you consume it, because your immune system doesn't process industrial honey the same way it processes real honey, and the difference is measurable.
You can test this yourself. It requires 30 minutes and a glucose meter from any pharmacy. Here's the protocol. Tomorrow morning, before eating, take your fasting blood sugar reading. Eat 1 tablespoon of your current honey. Test at 15 minutes, 30 minutes, 60 minutes, and 90 minutes. Write down the numbers. The next day, repeat with raw, unfiltered honey from a local source. Same amount, same timing. Compare the results. People who've tracked this report consistent patterns. Processed honey tends to spike blood sugar sharply and create a crash. Raw honey produces a more gradual rise, with stable energy lasting hours. The difference isn't total sugar content. Both contain fructose and glucose. The difference is what's still active in one and destroyed in the other. Enzymes in raw honey slow sugar absorption into your bloodstream. Pollen proteins create a buffering effect. Your pancreas releases insulin in measured amounts instead of emergency quantities. When you eat heat-treated honey, your body detects rapid glucose delivery and responds with higher insulin output. That's why the crash happens. Your body isn't malfunctioning, it's responding correctly to processed food. Here's what happens after you consume processed honey. In the first 30 minutes, your pancreas detects the spike and releases insulin. In the next 30 minutes, your body may release inflammatory signals as part of its response to the rapid sugar influx. Research on processed versus raw honey consumption has shown measurable differences in inflammation markers, though individual responses vary. Between 1 and 2 hours after consumption, processed honey affects your gut differently than raw honey. Studies comparing gut bacteria populations after regular consumption of commercial versus raw honey have found differences in bacterial composition. Processed honey tends to support different bacterial populations than raw honey, which contains prebiotics and enzymes that feed beneficial bacteria. Over longer periods, your immune system learns patterns from the foods you eat. Repeated exposure to rapidly delivered sugars can train your system to respond more aggressively to sweet compounds. This is one mechanism through which food sensitivities may develop over time. Drop a comment right now if you've felt bloated, tired, or unusually hungry after eating honey. Here's a test you can see. Purchase a basic agar plate from any science supply source. Swab your phone or counter and culture the bacteria for 24 hours until visible colonies appear. Apply a drop of supermarket honey to one colony. Apply raw local honey to another. Wait 24 hours. The supermarket honey colony often continues growing. The raw local honey colony typically develops a clear zone where bacteria cannot survive. This replicates the 1983 University of Waikato study. The antibacterial effect of authentic honey is visible and testable in a home setting. Archaeological analysis of medieval skeletal remains shows that populations using honey as their primary sweetener had better dental health markers than populations in similar regions who relied mainly on grain. Honey didn't just avoid causing decay, its antibacterial properties actively protected against it. Modern populations consuming commercial honey show cavity rates similar to those consuming refined sugar. The protective effect has been lost. Consider documented experiences. People switching from commercial to raw local honey have reported various health changes. Some with autoimmune conditions have tracked antibody levels and found improvements, though these are individual cases and not controlled studies. People with chronic sinus infections have reported longer periods without infection after incorporating raw honey. Physicians working with patients on seasonal allergies have observed that raw local honey, which contains pollen from the environment, appears to help some people, while commercial honey, which contains no pollen, shows no such benefit. These aren't medical claims. These are patterns that appear when people stop consuming industrial products and return to foods humans ate for thousands of years.
Your immune system evolved recognizing certain molecular patterns. When those patterns are absent or altered, your body responds differently. You've been consuming a product that's been stripped of the compounds that made it beneficial. The people processing it this way understood exactly what they were removing and why. The question is whether you'll continue buying it, because there's an alternative. And in the next chapter, you'll learn exactly how to find it.
People are finding real honey, despite an industrial system designed to hide it. Online communities dedicated to sourcing authentic honey have grown to tens of thousands of members. They share beekeeper contacts, post verification test results, and document their experiences. When industry trade groups label these efforts as misinformation, it confirms the threat to their business model. Here's how you verify what you're buying. Real honey has 5 testable characteristics. Test 1. Crystallization. Authentic honey crystallizes within 2 to 6 months, depending on nectar source. If your honey stays liquid after a year, it's been heated or contains added syrup. Acacia honey with higher fructose content may stay liquid longer, but even it will eventually crystallize. Test 2. Pollen check. Hold your jar to bright light. See tiny particles, bits of wax, floating specks? That's pollen and natural residue. If the honey is completely clear, it's been ultra-filtered. Without pollen, you have no proof of origin and reduced nutritional value. Test 3. Flame test. Dip a cotton wick into your honey and try to light it. Real honey has low moisture content. The wick will burn. Adulterated honey contains too much water or syrup. It won't sustain a flame. Test 4. Water test. Drop honey into room temperature water without stirring. Real honey sinks as a blob and dissolves slowly. Fake honey disperses immediately. Test 5. Taste complexity. Real honey has layers, floral notes, sometimes earthy or resinous undertones, occasionally a slight bitter finish. One-dimensional sweetness indicates processing has removed bioactive compounds. Run these tests now. If your honey fails 2 or more, you're not eating honey. Here's where to find authentic sources. Search for local beekeepers associations in your area. Contact members and ask, do your bees eat their own honey in winter, or do you feed sugar syrup? The answer must be their own honey. Do you heat during extraction? The answer must be no. What do your bees forage on? The answer should list multiple plant species, not a single crop. Warning signs. We extract year-round. Real beekeepers harvest once or twice annually. We maximize production. That means excessive harvesting and syrup replacement. All hives are on one farm. Monoculture honey lacks diversity. Look for labels stating raw, unfiltered, cold extracted. These terms aren't universally regulated, but they indicate intent. True Source Certified requires pollen testing and supply chain documentation. Price matters. Real honey costs $15 to $30 per pound. $8 per pound indicates adulteration or industrial processing. Or become a beekeeper. A top bar hive costs $200 to $400. Maintenance requires about 2 hours monthly during active season. A suburban backyard works. Let bees build naturally without forcing them into frames. Harvest once yearly in late summer. Cut the comb and let honey drain through cloth at room temperature. Your yield will be modest, 10 to 20 pounds annually, but it will be authentic. Here's the urgency. Traditional small-scale beekeepers are disappearing as industrial operations dominate. The knowledge of chemical-free, low-intervention beekeeping is being lost. If you find someone practicing the old methods, establish that relationship now. Subscribe if this opened your eyes.
Comment with your local honey sources to help others in your area. Try the glucose tracking test and share results. The industry can dismiss individual reports. They cannot dismiss thousands of documented experiences. The medieval beekeeper with cloudy, thick honey had something more valuable than gold. A food that preserved bodies, healed infected wounds, and sustained human health for millennia. Industrial processing destroyed it, heated it, filtered it, and sold you what remained. But you're reclaiming it. Your immune system recognizes the difference. Trust that response, and stop consuming the substitute. See you in our next video. Stay tuned. Give this video a like if you were impressed.